The smoke was already curling under the door when my 5-year-old son Noah first grabbed my hand. "Daddy, I'm scared," he whispered. I pulled him close, my mind racing through every possibility. We were trapped. The fire had started somewhere below us, and by the time the smoke detector screamed to life, the hallway was already an inferno. My wife Claire was a firefighter. She was supposed to be leading the rescue team that night. When Noah and I spotted her through the window, her yellow helmet bobbing through the crowd of first responders, we both exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. "Mommy's here," Noah said, his small voice trembling with relief. "She's going to save us." I had texted Claire our hotel information the night before. The name of the place. The street address. Our room number. 1217. I had even attached a photo of Noah standing by the elevator, giving a thumbs up, so she could picture exactly where we were. I thought it would make her smile. I thought it would make her want to join us. But when Claire reached our floor, she didn't turn toward our door. She turned toward room 1218. The room next door. The room where Daniel and his son Jake were staying. Noah's face crumpled. Tears cut clean tracks through the soot on his cheeks. "Daddy, why is Mommy going to Mr. Daniel's room? She's supposed to come to us." His voice cracked on the last word. He was only 5 years old. He didn't understand why his mother would walk past him on purpose. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. The fire was spreading fast. The ceiling above us groaned and spat embers. Black smoke poured through the vents, thick as tar, stinging our eyes and burning our throats. I grabbed a towel from the bathroom, soaked it in the sink, and pressed it over Noah's nose and mouth. Then I lifted him onto my hip and staggered toward the door. The handle was scorching hot. I could feel my palm blistering through the towel. I couldn't open it. We were trapped. Claire's voice drifted through the wall, clear and calm. "Daniel, stay low. Jake, hold my hand. I've got you both. You're going to be just fine." She was using the same soothing tone she used to use with Noah when he had nightmares. The same gentle voice that used to make me fall in love with her all over again every single night. I pounded on the wall. "Claire, we're in here. Noah is in here. Please." She didn't respond. She didn't even pause. Through the crackle and roar of the flames, I heard her leading Daniel and Jake toward the stairwell. Their footsteps faded. Her voice faded. And then there was only the fire. Noah was coughing now. Deep, wet coughs that made his whole body shake. "Daddy," he gasped. "Why doesn't Mommy hear me?" I yelled so loud. I pressed the wet towel tighter against his face. "She's coming, buddy. She just has to help them first. Then she'll come back for us." I didn't believe the words even as I said them. But what else could I tell him? The minutes stretched into an eternity. The room grew hotter. The smoke grew thicker. I could barely see Noah's face anymore, just the outline of his small body pressed against my chest. "Daddy," he whispered. "It hurts to breathe." "I know, baby. Just hold on a little longer." Did Mommy forget we're here? No, buddy. She didn't forget. Then why did she walk past our door? I had no answer. I still have no answer. Noah's body went limp in my arms. His eyes, those bright blue eyes that looked exactly like his mother's, fluttered closed. I shook him gently. "Noah. Noah, wake up. Come on, buddy. Stay with me." He didn't open his eyes. I screamed. I don't know how long I screamed. I screamed Claire's name until my throat was raw and bloody. I screamed until the firefighters, other firefighters, not Claire, finally broke down the door and found us. I remember hands pulling at me, voices shouting. Someone tried to take Noah from my arms, and I fought them. I wouldn't let go. He was my son. He was all I had left. At the hospital, they tried to separate us. Doctors in blue scrubs and white coats surrounded me, speaking in urgent tones about my burns, my hands, my arms, my face, my chest. I didn't care. I couldn't feel any of it. The only thing I could feel was the weight of Noah's body, growing colder by the minute. "Please," I begged the doctors. "Please save him. He's just sleeping. He's just tired. Please wake him up." A kind-faced woman in a white coat took my hands, my burned, blistered hands, and held them gently. "Mr. Davis," she said softly. Your son passed away before you arrived at the hospital. I am so sorry. I didn't believe her. I made them take Noah into the emergency room anyway. I watched through the glass as they worked on him for 45 minutes. The defibrillator, the chest compressions, the tubes and the machines, and the desperate, futile effort to bring back a child who was already gone. When the doctor finally came out, his face was grey with exhaustion and sorrow. The child suffered greatly while alive, he said. Please don't prolong his suffering now. Let him rest. I signed the papers with shaking, bandaged hands. I let them take Noah to the morgue. And then I sat alone in my hospital room, staring at the wall, wondering how I was supposed to keep breathing when my son couldn't. My brother Mark arrived the next morning. He took one look at me, wrapped in bandages, hollow-eyed, barely conscious, and burst into tears. Liam, he said, what happened? Where's Noah? I told him everything. The fire. Claire walking past our room. Noah's last words. The doctors. The flat line. Mark held me while I sobbed. I hadn't cried like that since I was a child. I didn't think I had tears left. But I was wrong. While I was in the hospital, Mark handled everything. He made arrangements with the funeral home. He contacted our friends and family. And he tried, repeatedly, to reach Claire. She didn't answer. Her phone went straight to voicemail every time. Mark left message after message. Claire, it's Mark. Liam is in the hospital. Noah is gone. You need to come. Please. No response. I asked Mark to check the room next door. He came back with a grim expression. Daniel and Jake are in the hospital too, he said. Minor injuries. A few blisters. Claire has been with them since the fire. She hasn't left their side. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. I dictated divorce papers to Mark from my hospital bed. I signed them with my left hand because my right hand was too burned to hold a pen. I asked Mark to file them as soon as possible. What about Claire? He asked. She'll sign when she's ready. Or she won't. Either way, I'm done. Mark looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. He just squeezed my shoulder and left to make the arrangements. The day of Noah's funeral arrived. I had myself discharged from the hospital against medical advice. I didn't care about my burns anymore. I didn't care about the risk of infection or the months of physical therapy ahead. I only cared about saying goodbye to my son. The funeral home was small and quiet. A white casket stood at the front, surrounded by flowers. Noah's preschool class had sent a wreath. Our neighbors had sent lilies. Mark had printed out photos of Noah, at the beach, at his birthday party, in his Little League uniform, and arranged them on a table near the entrance. I sat in my wheelchair at the front, staring at the casket, waiting for Claire to arrive. She didn't come. The service started. A pastor spoke. Friends shared memories. Noah's teacher read a poem. And still, Claire didn't come. Afterward, as the mourners filed out, I asked Mark to try her phone again. He dialed. It rang. And to my surprise, she answered. Claire, Mark said, his voice tight. Noah's funeral was today. Where are you? Her voice was sharp, impatient. Daniel and Jake have infections from the fire. They are in the hospital. I can't just leave them. Tell Liam I'll come home when things settle down. Mark's face went pale. Claire, did you hear what I said? Noah's funeral. Your son's funeral. You missed it. A pause. Then, I'll talk to Liam later. I have to go. The nurses are here with Jake's medication. She hung up. Mark stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he looked at me. His eyes were red. I'm sorry, Liam, he said. I'm so sorry. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. The week after Noah's funeral was a blur of painkillers and nightmares. I couldn't sleep without seeing his face. I couldn't close my eyes without hearing his voice. Daddy, it hurts to breathe. Why doesn't Mommy hear me? Can I get a new Mommy next time? The burns on my body were healing slowly. The doctors had told me I would have scars, permanent scars, across my hands and arms and chest and face. I didn't care about that either. What were a few more scars compared to the hole in my heart? Mark stayed with me during the day. He handled phone calls, chased down paperwork, made sure I ate and took my medications. At night, I was alone. I preferred it that way. I didn't want anyone to see me when the nightmares came. Claire finally showed up at the hospital 10 days after the fire. I had been moved from the burn unit to a regular recovery ward by then. My bandages had been changed, but I still looked like a mummy. My face was swollen and discolored. My hands were wrapped in layers of gauze. She walked into my room like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't missed Noah's funeral. Like she hadn't ignored my calls. Like she hadn't walked past our door while our son was dying. "Liam," she said, sitting down in the chair beside my bed. "You look terrible." I stared at her. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, but otherwise fine. No burns. No bandages. No sign that she had been through anything traumatic at all. "Where have you been?" I asked. My voice came out hoarse and flat. Daniel and Jake needed me. Jake's burns got infected. He's been running a fever. I couldn't just leave them. "Couldn't just leave them," I repeated. "Noah's funeral was 6 days ago." She frowned. "I know. I'm sorry I missed it. Things were chaotic." Chaotic. "Liam, don't do this. Not now. I'm here now. Isn't that what matters?" I laughed. It was an ugly sound, bitter and broken. "You're here now. 10 days late. After our son was buried. After I signed divorce papers. After I spent a week in the burn unit alone." "Divorce papers?" She sat up straighter, her eyes widening. "You're serious about that?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." She shook her head, her expression hardening. "You're just angry. You'll calm down eventually, and then we'll talk." "I'm not angry, Claire. I'm done." She stood up. "I'm not signing anything. We're married. We have a son together. We're going to work through this." "No," I said quietly. "We don't have a son together anymore. Noah is dead. Because of you." Her face went pale. "That's not fair." "Fair?" My voice rose. "You want to talk about fair? Fair is our 5-year-old son not dying in a fire because his mother was too busy saving her ex-boyfriend to notice he was right next door. Fair is me not sitting in this hospital bed with third-degree burns because you couldn't be bothered to check both rooms. Fair is Noah getting to grow up, go to school, fall in love, live a life. That's fair. And none of that happened. Because of you." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For once in her life, Claire had nothing to say. She left a few minutes later. I heard her phone ring as she walked down the hallway. Daniel's ringtone. She answered immediately, her voice soft and concerned. "I'm on my way. Just hang on." I closed my eyes and waited for the nightmares to come. Mark filed the divorce papers the next day. Claire's lawyer responded a week later, asking for a meeting. I agreed, on the condition that the meeting took place at my family home, the house I had bought before we got married, the house where Noah had taken his first steps, the house Claire had abandoned years ago. She arrived with her lawyer, a stern-faced woman named Patricia. I was waiting in the living room, still in my wheelchair, still wrapped in bandages. Mark sat beside me. My sister-in-law Sarah sat in the corner, taking notes. Claire walked in and looked around the room. Her eyes lingered on the photos on the mantel, Noah as a baby, Noah on his 2nd birthday, Noah in his Halloween costume. Her expression flickered, but she didn't say anything. "Liam," she said finally, "I'm not going to fight you on the divorce. But I'm not leaving with nothing. I contributed to this marriage. I deserve something." "Contributed how?" I asked. "Emotionally. You haven't been present for years. Financially. You spent every dollar you earned on Daniel and his son. Domestically. You were gone more nights than you were home." Her jaw tightened. "I was a good wife. I cooked. I cleaned. I raised Noah. When you were here. Which was barely half the time." Patricia interjected. "Mr. Davis, my client is entitled to a fair division of marital assets. The law is clear on this." "The law," I said, "is also clear on emotional abandonment and marital misconduct. And I have years of text messages, phone records, and witness statements documenting exactly where Claire was and who she was with while she was supposed to be building a life with me and our son. Patricia glanced at Claire, who looked away. I continued. I'm not trying to destroy you, Claire. I just want you out of my life. Sign the papers, take nothing, and go be with Daniel. That's what you wanted all along anyway. She didn't sign that day. She left with Patricia, her face pale and set. But I knew she would sign eventually. She had no choice. Over the next few weeks, my physical condition improved slowly. The burns on my hands healed enough that I could hold a fork and write my name. The burns on my face faded from angry red to dull pink. The doctor said I would need plastic surgery eventually, but I wasn't ready to think about that yet. Mentally, I was a wreck. I couldn't sleep without medication. I couldn't eat without forcing myself. I spent hours sitting in Noah's room, holding his favorite stuffed animal, a worn-out rabbit he had named Mr. Hops, and crying until I couldn't cry anymore. Mark suggested therapy. I went. The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Chen, listened to my story without judgment. She prescribed antidepressants and sleeping pills. She told me to be patient with myself, to give myself time to grieve. But time didn't help. The grief didn't get smaller. It just got heavier. I started having nightmares about the fire. I would wake up gasping, convinced I could smell smoke, feel the heat on my skin. Sometimes I would scream Noah's name. Sometimes I would scream Claire's. Mark started sleeping on my couch so he could be there when the nightmares came. He never complained, not once. But I saw the worry in his eyes. I knew he was afraid I would do something stupid. I was afraid of that too. 3 weeks after the funeral, I was discharged from the hospital. Mark drove me home. The house felt empty, not just because Claire had moved most of her things out months ago, but because Noah's presence was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. His toys were still scattered across the living room floor. His drawings were still taped to the refrigerator. His pajamas were still folded on his bed. I couldn't bring myself to touch any of it. Mark helped me settle in and then left to run errands. I was alone for the first time in weeks. I sat in Noah's room, holding Mr. Hops, and tried to remember the sound of his laugh. But the only sound I could hear was his voice from that night. Daddy, why doesn't Mommy hear me? I called Claire. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I sent her a text. We need to talk about Noah's things. Please call me. An hour later, she responded. I'm busy. Daniel is having a hard time. I'll call you tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went. No call. I started to realize that if I wanted closure, I would have to create it myself. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. His name was Frank, a retired police detective with a reputation for discretion. I gave him Claire's name, Daniel's name, and a list of questions. How much time had Claire been spending with Daniel? How much money had she given him? Where had they gone together? What had they done? Frank came back with a thick folder a week later. The contents made my stomach turn. Over the past 2 years, Claire had given Daniel nearly $40,000. Money for his rent. Money for Jake's medical bills. Money for a car when his old one broke down. Money for vacations. Vacations she had told me were work trips or training exercises. She had taken Daniel and Jake to the beach twice. To a theme park once. To a cabin in the mountains for a long weekend. She had told me she was working double shifts during those times. I had believed her. Why wouldn't I? She had also been spending an average of 4 nights a week at Daniel's apartment. Sometimes she came home late. Sometimes she didn't come home at all. I had assumed she was working late or sleeping at the station. I had been wrong. There was no evidence of a physical affair, no hotel receipts, no romantic texts, no witnesses who had seen them kissing or holding hands. But the emotional affair was undeniable. Claire had given Daniel and Jake the time, attention, and resources that should have gone to me and Noah. And Noah had paid the price. I filed a motion to recover the marital assets Claire had spent on Daniel. My lawyer, a sharp young woman named Olivia who had been recommended by Mark's law partner, argued that Claire had violated her fiduciary duty to the marriage by transferring substantial sums to a third party without my knowledge or consent. The judge agreed. Daniel was ordered to repay the $40,000 within 60 days. Claire was furious. She showed up at my house unannounced, her face red with anger. How could you do that? Daniel doesn't have that kind of money. He's going to lose his apartment. Jake might have to change schools. You're destroying their lives. I met her at the door, blocking the entrance. Their lives. Not our lives. Not Noah's life. Theirs. Liam, please. Just drop the motion. Let Daniel keep the money. We can figure something else out. There's nothing to figure out. The court made its decision. Daniel can pay or he can face the consequences. She stared at me, her eyes bright with tears, whether from anger or grief, I couldn't tell. You're not the man I married. No, I agreed. I'm not. That man died in the fire with his son. She left without another word. Daniel paid the money. I don't know how, maybe he borrowed it, maybe he sold something, maybe Claire helped him despite the court order. I didn't care. I donated every dollar to a burn foundation for children. It was the only way I could think of to turn something ugly into something good. But I wasn't done. I reported Claire to her superiors at the fire department. I provided them with the timeline of the fire, the evidence that she had bypassed our room, the testimony of the firefighters who had found us. I asked for a formal investigation into her conduct. The investigation took 2 weeks. At the end of it, Claire was demoted from captain to firefighter. She was suspended without pay for 30 days. And she was required to undergo counseling for personal conduct affecting professional duties. The union appealed. I provided more evidence. The appeal was denied. Claire stopped returning my calls after that. I didn't mind. I had nothing left to say to her anyway. But the nightmares continued. I started seeing Daniel everywhere. At the grocery store. At the gas station. At the park where Noah used to play. He would look at me with those sad, guilty eyes, and I would feel the rage building in my chest like a fire of its own. One night, I followed him home from work. I watched him unlock his apartment door, carry Jake inside, close the curtains. I imagined walking up those stairs, knocking on that door, demanding answers. I imagined my hands around his throat. I didn't do it. I drove home instead, shaking and sick. The next day, I called Olivia. I want to sue Daniel for wrongful death, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Liam, that's a very high bar. You would need to prove that Daniel actively prevented Claire from rescuing Noah, or that he intentionally concealed the fact that you were in the room next door. Do you have evidence of that? No, I admitted. But I know he knew. He had to have known. He was right there. The law doesn't work on feelings, Liam. It works on evidence. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. 6 months after the fire, my physical wounds had mostly healed. The scars remained, ropey and pink across my hands and arms, a mottled patch on my left cheek. I wore long sleeves year-round now. I couldn't stand the way people stared. Mentally, I was surviving. The antidepressants helped. The therapy helped. Mark's constant presence helped. But every night, I still dreamed of smoke and flames and a small voice asking why his mother didn't love him enough to save him. I hadn't seen Claire since the day she showed up at my house to yell about the money. I knew from mutual friends that she had moved in with Daniel and Jake. I knew she had taken a leave of absence from the fire department. I knew she was struggling, drinking too much, sleeping too little, lashing out at anyone who tried to help. I didn't care. She had made her choices. She could live with them. But I couldn't let go of my anger at Daniel. He had known about Noah and me. He had to have known. We were right next door. He must have heard us coughing, crying, screaming. And he hadn't said a word to Claire. He had let her rescue him and Jake while my son died. I couldn't prove it, but I knew it in my bones. I started small. I had Olivia send Daniel a letter demanding that he publicly apologize for his role in Noah's death. He refused. I escalated. I filed a complaint with Daniel's employer, a marketing firm that did business with my family's company. I told them about his relationship with Claire, his financial dependence on her, the fire, Noah's death. They fired him within a week. Claire called me, screaming, "You got Daniel fired. He has a son to support. What is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me?" I said quietly, "My son is dead. And the man who helped kill him is still walking around free. That's what's wrong with me. Daniel didn't kill Noah. It was an accident. A terrible, horrible accident. It wasn't an accident. You chose to save Daniel and Jake instead of us. You walked past our door. You didn't even check. And Daniel let you. He didn't know you were there. He knew. I hung up before she could respond. The harassment campaign started accidentally. I was venting to Mark one night about Daniel, about how unfair it was that he got to live a normal life while Noah was in the ground. Mark suggested I make Daniel's life less normal. I didn't hire anyone. I didn't need to. I just started showing up. I showed up at Daniel's apartment building with a bullhorn and a sign that read, "This man helped kill my son." I stood on the sidewalk and recited the facts of the fire. Claire bypassing our room, Noah's last words, the funeral she missed. A crowd gathered. Someone recorded it. The video went viral. I showed up at Jake's school during pickup time. I didn't approach the children, I'm not a monster, but I stood across the street with my sign and let the parents see. Within a week, Jake's classmates were asking questions. Within 2 weeks, the school asked Daniel to withdraw Jake to avoid disruption. I showed up at Daniel's mother's house on her birthday. She opened the door to find me standing there with a bouquet of dead flowers and a note that said, "Your son destroyed my family. I hope you're proud." It was cruel. I knew it was cruel. But I didn't care. Cruelty was all I had left. Daniel finally broke. He showed up at my house one night, alone, his hand shaking. "Please," he said, "please stop. Jake is terrified. My mother won't speak to me. I lost my job. I can't find another one because every time I interview, someone mentions the video." I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you and Noah were in the room next door. I swear to God, I didn't know. Claire told me she had checked all the rooms on that floor. She said no one else was there. I laughed. It was a hollow, bitter sound. She lied to you. Or you're lying to me. Either way, I don't believe you. Liam, please. I have nothing left. Just let me and Jake live in peace. You had peace. You had peace while my son was dying. You don't get to ask for peace now. I closed the door in his face. The next week, Daniel and Jake moved out of the city. I don't know where they went. I didn't bother to find out. I had made my point. I had made him suffer. But it didn't bring Noah back. Nothing would ever bring Noah back. The divorce dragged on for nearly a year. Claire fought every motion, contested every claim, delayed every hearing. She hired 3 different lawyers. The first 2 quit, citing irreconcilable differences with their client. The third, a bulldog named Marcus, seemed determined to take me for everything I had. But I had the advantage. I had the evidence. I had the text messages, the phone records, the bank statements, the witness testimony. I had Frank the private investigator's thick folder. And I had the sympathy of the court, a burned, grieving father fighting a wife who had missed her own son's funeral. In the end, Claire walked away with nothing. No alimony. No share of the house. No visitation rights to a grave she had never visited anyway. The judge granted the divorce on the grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment and abandonment. I signed the final papers in Olivia's office, my scarred hand steady on the pen. Claire signed across the table from me, her face pale and set. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. "It's done," Olivia said, stamping the documents. Claire stood up. For a moment, she hesitated, like she wanted to say something. Then she turned and walked out of the room without a backward glance. I sat in the chair for a long time after she left, staring at the signature on the paper. Her name, looping and familiar. The name I had whispered on our wedding night. The name I had screamed in the fire. Liam. Olivia's voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" "No," I said. "But I will be." I didn't see Claire again for 2 years. I heard about her through mutual friends. She had moved to a small town upstate, taken a job as a volunteer firefighter, started going to therapy. She had stopped drinking, apparently. She had started going to church. I didn't care. I had moved on with my life as best I could. I had gone back to work, throwing myself into my consulting practice with a desperation that bordered on obsession. I had started running, pushing my scarred body through mile after mile until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I had started dating, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. There was a woman named Emily. She was a pediatric nurse, kind and patient and endlessly understanding. She didn't push me to talk about Noah. She didn't flinch when she saw my scars. She just sat with me in the silence and let me grieve. I wasn't in love with her. Not yet. But I could feel myself healing, slowly, in ways I hadn't thought possible. And then Claire showed up. It was a Sunday afternoon in autumn. The leaves were turning, the air was crisp, and I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee when a car pulled into the driveway. An old sedan, beaten up and rusted. The kind of car someone drives when they have no money and no options. Claire got out. She looked different. Older. Thinner. Her hair was shorter, streaked with grey. Her face was lined in ways that hadn't been there before. She was wearing jeans and a worn-out jacket, nothing like the polished firefighter I had married. "Liam," she said, her voice uncertain. "Can we talk?" I set down my coffee. About what? About everything. About Noah. About us. About the fire. There is no us, Claire. There hasn't been for years. She stepped closer. I know. I know that. I need to apologize. Properly. Not in a courtroom, not through lawyers. Face to face. I didn't want to hear it. Every instinct told me to send her away, to close the door, to pretend she didn't exist. But something in her expression, something broken and desperate, made me pause. 5 minutes, I said. Say what you need to say. She sat down on the porch steps, hugging her knees to her chest. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then the words came tumbling out, messy and raw. I was wrong, she said. About everything. About Daniel, about the money, about the fire. I was so caught up in trying to save everyone that I forgot to save the people who mattered most. I forgot to save you. I forgot to save Noah. I said nothing. I thought I was being a good person. Helping Daniel, helping Jake. They had no one, and I thought I could be that person for them. I thought that's what my father would have wanted. He was a firefighter too, you know. He died saving people. I thought I was honoring his memory by doing the same. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But I wasn't honoring him. I was using him as an excuse. An excuse to neglect my own family. An excuse to pour all my time and energy into people who weren't you and Noah. An excuse to avoid the hard work of being a wife and mother. Claire. Let me finish. Please. She took a shaky breath. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I know. I know what I did. I know who I hurt. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it, even though I know I never can. She stood up. That's all. That's everything. I'm sorry, Liam. I'm so sorry. She walked back to her car and drove away. I watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside, sat down on Noah's bed, and cried. The years that followed were quiet. I kept working, kept running, kept going to therapy. Emily and I grew closer, then drifted apart. She wanted children, and I couldn't face the thought of being a father again. We parted amicably, with no hard feelings on either side. I started volunteering at a burn camp for children, helping kids who had been through similar traumas. It was hard at first, seeing their scarred faces, hearing their stories, remembering Noah's last moments. But gradually, it became something else. Something almost like purpose. I told the children about Noah. About his laugh, his kindness, his love of puzzles and spicy snacks. I told them how brave he was, even at the end. I told them that grief doesn't go away, but it does get easier to carry. Some of the children asked about Claire. I told them the truth, that she had made terrible choices, that she was trying to do better, but forgiveness was complicated. I didn't know if I had forgiven her. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I had stopped wishing her harm. That was something. I heard about Daniel years later, through a mutual acquaintance. He had remarried, a kind woman who accepted Jake as her own. They had moved to another state, started a new life. Jake's heart condition had stabilized with medication and surgery. He was doing well in school, playing sports, making friends. Daniel had written me a letter, which the acquaintance passed along. It was short. I'm sorry for what I did and what I didn't do. I hope you find peace. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't look at it again. Peace. What did peace even mean? Claire moved to a remote mountain village to teach at a one-room schoolhouse. I heard this from Mark, who heard it from Sarah, who heard it from a friend of a friend. She had given up firefighting completely. She was living simply, helping children who had nothing, trying to earn back some of the good karma she had squandered. I didn't reach out. I didn't write. I didn't call. But sometimes, late at night, I wondered if she had found what she was looking for. If the mountains and the children and the simple life had healed something in her. If she had finally learned to see the people in front of her instead of the ones she imagined needed her more. I hoped so. Not because she deserved it, she didn't. But because hating her was exhausting, and I was tired of being exhausted. The last time I saw Claire was at Noah's grave. It was the 10th anniversary of the fire. I had driven to the cemetery early, before the sun was up, to avoid the crowds. I sat on the grass beside his headstone and told him about my life, the camp, the children, the long, slow process of learning to live again. When I looked up, Claire was standing at the edge of the grave, a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands. She looked older now. Her hair was mostly grey, her face deeply lined. She walked with a limp. Mark had told me about the incident in the village, the traffic woman, the broken leg that had never healed properly. Liam, she said. I didn't think you'd be here. It's his birthday. I know. That's why I came. She knelt down, awkwardly, because of the limp, and placed the flowers beside the grave. Then she sat back on her heels and bowed her head. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The sun rose over the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Birds sang in the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I'm sorry, Claire said finally. I know I've said it before, but I'm still sorry. I'll always be sorry. I looked at her, this woman I had loved, hated, mourned, and finally released. She wasn't the person I had married. Neither was I. We were both ghosts of our former selves, haunting the space where our son should have been. I know, I said. She nodded slowly, like she had been expecting that answer and nothing more. I'm leaving again, she said. There's a village in Nepal that needs a teacher. I leave next week. I don't know if I'll come back. Then this is goodbye. Yes. She hesitated. Liam, do you think Noah would have forgiven me? I thought about it. Noah had been a kind child, quick to forgive, slow to anger. He had loved his mother fiercely, even when she didn't deserve it. Even at the end, in the fire, his last words hadn't been angry. They had been confused. Hurt. But not angry. I don't know, I said honestly. I hope so. For your sake. She smiled, a small, sad, broken thing. I hope so too. She stood up, brushed the dirt from her knees, and limped back toward the road. I watched her go, watched her figure grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the morning light. Then I turned back to Noah's grave. Goodbye, I whispered. I'll see you soon. The years passed. I kept living. I kept growing. I kept carrying Noah with me, not as a weight but as a compass, a reminder of what mattered, of who I wanted to be. I never remarried. I never had more children. But I wasn't alone. I had Mark and Sarah. I had the children at the burn camp. I had the work I had chosen, the life I had built from the ashes of the one I had lost. And late at night, when the nightmares came, because they still came, sometimes, I would wake up, take a breath, and remind myself I survived. I'm still here. Noah would want me to keep going. So I did. Claire's perspective epilogue. I'm old now. Older than my parents ever got to be. Older than I ever thought I'd be. I've spent the last 15 years teaching children in some of the poorest places on earth. I've slept on dirt floors, eaten food I couldn't identify, contracted diseases I couldn't pronounce. I've been robbed, beaten, and left for dead. I've also been hugged, thanked, and loved in ways I never deserved. I did it for Noah. Every lesson I taught, every child I held, every village I built, it was all for him. A penance. An apology. A desperate attempt to earn back the love I had thrown away. I don't know if it worked. I don't know if anywhere, in any afterlife, Noah is watching me and thinking, she's trying. She's doing better. I hope so. But I'll never know for sure. The only thing I know is that I would give anything, to go back to that night. To walk past room 1218. To break down the door of room 1217. To pull my son into my arms and tell him I was sorry, I was so sorry, I loved him more than anything in the world. But I can't go back. None of us can. So I go forward. One step at a time. Carrying Noah with me, always, in the quiet place where my heart used to be. I heard Liam got married last year. Not to Emily, she was long gone. To someone new, a woman who worked at the burn camp with him. A woman who understood grief the way he did. I wasn't invited to the wedding. I wouldn't have gone if I had been. But I was glad for him. He deserved happiness. He always had. I don't know if I deserve happiness. I don't think about it much. Happiness isn't really the point anymore. The point is to keep going. To keep helping. To keep trying to be the person I should have been all along. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. The sun is setting over the mountains. I can hear children laughing in the distance. I close my eyes and imagine Noah among them, healthy, whole, happy. Mommy, he says in my imagination, I'm okay. I open my eyes. The children are still laughing. The sun is still setting. And I am still here. Still trying. Still sorry. That will have to be enough.